I'd imagine this group who was kidnapping cute girls wasn't just made up of these 5 guys. They may be the ones actually carrying out the kidnappings. But I figured they wouldn't be enough to handle transporting the kidnapped girls, finding a buyer to sell them to, or getting a hold of people to help smuggle them out of Salinas. No matter if you were a merchant, someone in power, or an evil organization, you had to have someone backing you from behind the scenes. That was just the standard for how these things played out, no doubt about it. What the hell do you think you're doing? The man who ran into the cell screamed when he saw us playing games. It wasn't the leader or the lookout from before, but a different guy this time. Then there was us playing a game of Reversey, that game that was pretty similar to Othello. I'd made the board in black and white pieces myself. I've had it the whole time, actually, I said, pointing toward the leather bag on the floor. The man's eyes were wide open as he stared at the bag in a daze. A few moments passed. You did? You bet I did. The man didn't look too satisfied with my answer as he sat himself down back in his chair. I even went through the trouble of making the board so obviously big that it clearly wouldn't have been able to fit in my bag, yet he didn't notice at all. Wow. Are you for real right now? Then, a little while later. What in the world are you eating? Well, as you can see, we've got some bread, extra large meat skewers, and grape juice. Where did you get that from? From this bag. Like how that it all fit in there. The 4 of us in the cage were all holding bread and huge meat skewers in both hands with big cups of grape juice by our feet. There was no way that would all fit into the tiny bag I had, not normally, anyway. It fits just fine. Everyone, put your skewers and cups in here when you're done, okay? All right. 4 sets of cups and skewers were being put away into the impossibly small bag. That ain't right. There's no way they can all fit in there, the man screamed, running out of the room with bloodshot eyes just like the first guy had done. I bet he's going to go call the leader again. He was the only one with the key, and the lookouts couldn't open the cell themselves. It was a pretty good way of dealing with stupid lookouts who could get tricked or thought about laying their grubby hands on the goods. They didn't need to go to the leader every time if anything happened, though. Again with this crap. What is it this time? The leader and the lookout from before came back together. These guys have some kind of freaky bag in there. Where? You are. We were the only things inside the cell, of course. There was no bag, no juice, nothing. Quote. Are you being serious? Are you all just screwing with me? The leader bellowed. He wasn't referring to us, of course, but the second guy who'd been on lookout duty. Do you all just go calling for me whenever you have a bad dream, is that it? More than that, why the hell are you sleeping on the job in the first place? They may be kids, but what the hell do you think it means to be on lookout, It was like he was disciplining a new employee or something. I wondered if he was going to make the guy go scream in front of people about how worthless he was at this job. Oof, I didn't even want to think about it. But putting that aside, hey, girls, you got any games or meat skewers in there? The 4 of us shook our heads. Oh, looks like the 8-year-old has some sauce on her cheeks from the skewers. You, come with me. The leader took the lookout by the ear and dragged him into the other room. It seemed they luckily didn't notice the sauce. All right, girls, I'm gonna explain what our next plan is while they're gone. Okay. Sheesh, the hell was that all about? The third lookout muttered to himself as he came into the room. He was some guy who looked like he was in his early 20s. My shift wasn't supposed to be until tomorrow. I should have just gone out drinking when I had the chance, damn it. What happened to the other people? They're getting an earful from the boss right now. They've got to all be idiots for making that much of a fuss over a few hallucinations, I'm telling ya. This guy was much friendlier than the other 2. Maybe he liked talking, or maybe he just liked kids, though I didn't think he'd be doing this work if it was the latter. I mean, it was true he could just happen to be doing this on the side to make ends meet or something. Regardless, I can't let this chance to get some info go to waste. What's going to happen to us now? I asked, making sure my voice was as uneasy sounding as possible. I did that same cutesy pose as earlier, too, for good measure. If I didn't do it now, I'd never know when I'd get the chance to do it again, so I made sure to do it as much as I could now. Well, let's see. No one's gonna hurt you anymore, and your life isn't in any danger, so you don't have to worry about any of that. You'll never have to worry about going hungry, and you might even get to live a pretty good life too. I mean, you might end up having to do, like, maid work or something, but they won't be making you do heavy labor or anything. If you get them to take care of you, you might get to live your life as if you were, I dunno, the fourth-born daughter in a lower-class noble family or something. Man, I'm getting jealous. Yeah, considering his line of work would get him hanged if he was caught, I bet he really would envy that kind of life. He said that like he meant it from the very bottom of his heart. But what he was describing was pretty much, you know, being a slave. A sex slave by the sound of it. Pretty much as worse a crime as it got. It was already a crime when they kidnapped us, but outside of forced slavery, all other forms of enslavement were illegal in this country, whether that was buying, selling, or using slaves. Forced slavery may have the word slave in it, but it's actually one of the sentences you can receive from a crime. There aren't any countries here charitable enough to feed criminals for free, so even lesser crimes can earn you the death penalty. That's still a bit too cruel for even them, though, and a waste of potential human resources as well. That's why those on death row are either sent to work as forced laborers in mines or as shock troopers in times of war. Prisoners turned shock troopers would be able to have their sentences reduced the longer they stayed alive and performed well in battle. So it's better than the fate of the miners who would slowly waste away until death took them. Aside from that, the perpetrators could be sentenced to slavery for life or however long their sentence was. But the fact of the matter was that only criminals could be slaves. Any children born to slaves weren't guilty of anything, so they could live their lives as relatively normal citizens. It was just that their parents were criminals, that was all. If they committed any sort of crime while still a minor, a thorough investigation was conducted to determine whether their parents or another adult forced them to do it, or if it was something they had to do to survive. In short, unless there was some sort of extraneous circumstance, having little girl slaves who were less than 10 years old wasn't only illegal, but a serious felony. Selling, owning, whatever, everyone who was involved in the process was guilty of the same crime. That was why even the slightest leak could spell the end, and if anyone reported them, it could lead to the whole group being wiped out. They wouldn't be able to pull any of this off if they didn't have someone backing them from the shadows. "Where are we being taken after this?" I asked in a quivering voice. The lookout must have figured there was no harm telling us since we wouldn't be able to do anything about it, because he answered without so much as a second thought. "To the estates of some of the local nobles or some well-to-do merchants. The capital is way too risky to even think about, and most of the more powerful aristocrats and big merchants wouldn't dare take the chance. They can already use their own money or authority to get any young girl they have their eye on, you know. That's why you're all going to some less important aristocrats, or maybe one of the smaller merchants from around here. If I'm being honest, they're people out in the sticks who can't go out and nab a girl for themselves, since people would realize something was up." "Oh. Yep, I read you loud and clear. So basically, it meant the four of us might all be going to different places. If that were the case, I had to finish this before I left this town. Does that mean we have to stay here until then?" "Actually, it looks like we'll be getting out of here by the time morning comes around." I didn't know if he was bored, just liked talking, or liked keeping little girls company. He was probably a lolico, I mean, a nice guy who just wanted to calm some scared little girls down. Probably. And since they were about to whisk us away without any chance to talk with anyone outside this cell, he probably thought it was fine to tell me at least that much. We'd figure it out once we arrived at where we were going, anyway. The leader was saying we were supposed to wait until we had one or two more, but it looks like someone out there is really tearing up the town trying to find you. Not to mention the last two guys seem emotionally unstable now, so we're going to cut it off with just you guys this time. Good, all according to Kikaku. Oh, Kikaku means plan, by the way. I tried getting some sleep since they were probably going to come wake us up early the next morning, but the guard ended up talking to me so much that I couldn't really get any shut-eye. After asking so many questions, it was only polite on my part to hear him out. That was why I humored him at least, but it didn't seem like he was going to stop anytime soon. Wait, he's on the night shift, so he's not going to sleep in the first place. Like hell I'm gonna put up with this all night. He finally let me go after I told him it'd be rough traveling by cart without getting some sleep. And the other three, you ask? They were fast asleep the whole time while leaving me to talk with the lookout. Right around daybreak the next day, I woke up after hearing an "oh yes." When I turned to get a better look, I saw the leader and his 4 men had come into the room. Looked like it was time to get going. The leader opened the cell, and the other kidnappers came to tie us up one at a time before shoving a pieces of cloth in our mouths and gagging us. They were being incredibly thorough about this. They kept our legs unbound and walked us up the staircase before leading us outside. Of course, I didn't forget to leave them a little present with my potion-making ability once we made it to the top of the stairs. When we left the rundown shack they'd been keeping us in, I could see the silhouette of a wagon coming into view. They forced us into the back, which was when they finally bound our feet. There were 6 empty barrels stacked in there, and you wanna bet on what happened next? Come on, I'd be willing to bet you a gold coin on it. Though I figure none of you would place such an obvious bet. With 2 empty barrels and 4 more filled with a bunch of cute girls, the wagon took off toward the city gates. As soon as they put the lid on the barrels, I pulled a knife out of my item box. This position was really uncomfortable to stay in, so I cut through the bindings around my ankles first, then through the ones on my wrists. I thought about making something that would melt through the rope, but I didn't want to end up melting my own body as well, so I went with a knife instead. Even if I nicked myself a little, I'd be fine if I drank a healing potion after. It was a simple matter cutting through the rope, especially when I made a potion container shaped like a vibro knife to do it. It even slashed straight through my hands, and boy did it slash them good. YEOWWWP potion. Potion, now. It was only after I drank the potion I realized something. I could have just stored the rope in my item box without cutting it. Arg. Why am I such an idiot? All that pain and all for friggin' nothing. God, I need to take this grudge out on someone now. After some time had passed, the cart stopped. I could hear voices coming from outside. What cargo do you have in there? We're carrying 6 empty casks and we're on our way to fill them with wine. Then I'll go and confirm. Yep, that's 6 casks all right. You're clear to proceed. Seriously? You're not gonna check if they're actually empty? Oh, whatever, now's my chance. I busted through the lid of the barrel I'd cut up with my knife before popping out of the top and yelling at the top of my lungs. These guys are kidnapping little girls. Please, help us. Yep, those are certainly empty casks. Go on through. Thank you kindly. The guard who'd lifted the flap of the wagon's tarp was staring right at me, a sneer on his face. He stood alongside someone who looked like a merchant and one of the wagon's guard, both of whom I'd never seen before. The merchant and the escort climbed into the wagon, getting ready to tie me up again. Oh, I get it. So they're all in cahoots with each other. I'd already unraveled how most of their operation worked, so I was done playing along, not to mention that I was kinda pissed off at this point too. Alright, let's do this. I created several gourd-shaped potion containers right above the wagon, the same ones that were filled with pseudo-nitroglycerin and concentrated sulfuric acid from the war with Alago. The sound of a thunderous explosions rocked the area. I created a pillar of golden clouds spiraling skyward as a marker to let Roland and Franca know where I was. To top it all off, a pinch of sunlight. I reached out and made like I was grabbing a ray of sunshine that was peeking through the tarp of the wagon, hiding the fact that I had just created a miniature spray can in my hand. You gotta do these things in style when you're putting on a show, ya feel me? As for the contents of the can, well, the men who attempted to climb into the wagon to subdue me had frozen in place because of the explosions and my strange movements. I turned toward them and shouted, "Have a taste of my special technique. Breath of the Goddess. AAAAAGH." While I yelled the name of something that sounded more like a spell than a special technique, I blasted them with my freshly made pepper spray. That didn't mean the goddess's breath was so rank it could incapacitate someone, though. Who knew what SLAs would do if that rumor started going around? I should probably change the name of my special move. As the other guards and members in the wagon came rushing over to see what the commotion was about, I had a face full of pepper spray waiting for them for their trouble. Since the guards didn't come rushing to my aid when I was yelling earlier, it was safe to assume they were all in on the kidnapping operation as well. Even if some of them were innocent, it wasn't like the spray left any lasting effects, and I always had healing potions if it came down to it too. All I had to do now was wait for the soldiers to show up, and oh yeah, I had to let everyone out of the barrels. It wasn't like I forgot about them or anything. I just didn't want them to get taken hostage, or for them to breathe in the pepper spray, or, you know. Okay, I forgot. I'm sorry. Just to be safe, I made another spray that could knock a person out cold with one shot and made sure to use it on everyone writhing around on the ground. Maybe I should have just made those from the beginning. Well, I guess they did need to learn their lesson, so the pepper spray didn't go to waste after all. That was the reason I was sticking with. After a dozen or so minutes had passed, the line of hunters and merchants waiting to get out of town had begun to grow restless when they realized they weren't moving at all. It was right around then that the silhouettes of 4 people came rushing out from the center of town. They gradually came closer and closer, until, oh, Fran. As the one with the most stamina, Fran was leading the group, followed by Roland, then Emile and Belle, who were way behind but bringing up the rear nonetheless. Don't you? Oh, Fran, me. Oh dear, she doesn't seem too happy with me. I should keep my mouth shut for the time being. Do you know how worried we were? We spent the whole night running around town looking for you. What were you doing this whole time? Fran was usually so respectful when talking with me, but this was the first time I'd seen her this furious. I decided to come clean and give her an honest answer, since it was almost guaranteed things would get ugly if I tried to lie my way out of this now and flubbed it. So I shouted as loud as I could for the people around to hear. Well, I actually ended up being kidnapped by a group who were only going after cute girls. The kidnappers are in the back of the wagon, and these girls are the other victims they've snatched. The guards knocked out around the wagon were conspiring with the kidnappers too. Ow, my throat hurts from all this yelling. WHAAAAAT? Fran, the rest of my group, and everyone who'd gathered around exclaimed in shock. I could understand why they'd be so surprised. If there were a gang of serial kidnappers in a town as small as this, you could bet there would have been rumors about it already. If the guards were in on it as well, it was going to be a huge scandal for the governor once he found out. Kidnapping and illegal slave trafficking, both crimes far and away worse than robbery. Considering its proximity to other countries, there was an extremely high chance visitors were victims as well. At worst, it could even turn into an international affair. Before long, an enormous mass of people came marching toward us from the center of town. Yeah, I was thinking it's about time they showed up. The real soldiers of Salinas had arrived. What's going on here? A group of a few dozen soldiers finally showed up on the scene, probably from whatever barracks they'd been stationed at. This was the city closest to the country's border, after all, so of course everyone on duty would come running if there were explosions and strange golden pillars of smoke by the gates. I'd be more surprised if they didn't come. I'd imagine those who weren't already on call were probably gearing up right this moment. No matter how good of terms they may be on with the other countries, they wouldn't let their guard down enough to not be prepared for an invasion. There was always a chance of a sudden raid, which was why there was such an inordinate amount of soldiers for a town of the size of Salinas. No other towns this far from the border would be able to house this many of them. What's going on? Is there anyone who knows what happened here? The commander of the soldiers shouted out, having his men circle the wagon. Guards and people who appeared to be in charge of protecting the wagon were scattered on the ground like leaves, and a group of 3 armed men and women were standing right next to them. Under normal circumstances, they'd be arrested on the spot, no questions asked. Among those 3 potential suspects, however, was a man with an appearance that suggested him to be anything but an average commoner. A female knight wearing an expensive-looking set of armor, and a young man who looked to be their attendant and in charge of protecting them. Their swords were all sheathed, and they didn't seem particularly panicked over the situation. Standing beside them was a group of young girls with Belle, who only looked like she wasn't armed, and me probably being counted as part of them. We didn't look like the type of people who'd try to forcibly push our way through the gate, no matter how you sliced it. The guards would come running if we stayed here, so it was unthinkable that we'd just hang around waiting for that to happen. If we wanted to try running back into town or making a break for it, we would have already hightailed it out of here by now. This was the commander in charge of dealing with emergency situations, so it was a safe bet he was no fool. He'd ordered his men to surround us just in case, but he wasn't going to jump the gun and make a heavy-handed decision without hearing us out first. You there? Can you explain what happened here? The commander had directed the question toward Roland, since he seemed like the most likely one to be in charge here. Roland, however, just turned to look at me instead, seeming hopelessly lost. This was why I explained what happened in his stead. Pretty much what always happened, really. The owners of this wagon are a small part of a group of serial kidnappers who target cute girls. The guards laying on the ground knew they were transporting girls they'd abducted, and are in league with the kidnappers. No way I'm letting up on using cute. No matter how painful the incredulous stare Fran sent my way may be, I'm not giving that up. This might be the last time I have the honor of saying I've been kidnapped by people who only target cute girls, after all. I had to make sure people understood it wasn't just your ordinary kidnapping ring, but a cute girls kidnapping ring. And though I say cute girls kidnapping ring, that didn't mean all the members were cute girls themselves doing the kidnapping. I'd imagine there were plenty of people out there who'd want to be captured by a group like that. What did you say? The commander recoiled, making a face like he'd just stuck lemon concentrate in his mouth. He must have been aware of the kidnapping reports. And he was probably happy as an officer of the peace that the culprits had been caught. Especially since they were the ones who'd catch the blame for the decline in public safety if the criminals were still on the loose. However, there was something very inconvenient for him mixed up with my explanation. Mainly the fact that the guards were in league with the kidnappers. And not just one of them, but all 6 who'd been in charge of watching the city gates. This was a scandal the likes of which they'd never seen before, and could become a much bigger problem if the top brass caught wind of it. This was essentially the face I've deserved due to the fact that it bordered so many countries after all. So, you're saying these 3 took care of 6 guards when 2 of them barely look like they've just become adults? And without giving them any time to take any of the girls hostage? Oh, no, that's not quite right. I responded instantly before Roland and the others had the chance to make any weird excuses. They were bound to interview the other witnesses who saw what had happened to get the facts straight. Not only was this a huge problem in and of itself, but a massive issue for the army as well. This wasn't going to end with testimony from only one side. Well, so long as they weren't working with the kidnappers too. What? Then who could have? The goddess. Her. Like I said, it's the work of the goddess. She used her powers to subdue these evil people, then created the rumbling and golden clouds to summon her devout followers. That's who you all happen to be, right? You're all devout followers of the goddess. Herm. If that was all meant to summon her most devout followers, then I suppose that may have been referring to us. He seemed confused but, at the same time, a little proud to say that. It was easy to see why, since being called to service as a loyal servant of the goddess was an honor that would follow him for the rest of time. It was more valuable than any medal he could receive from his country. So, have you met her? The goddess, that is. Yes, that's right. She's the absolute epitome of beauty, although compared to her statues, her chest is a little. No, much smaller in person. I wasn't lying. I just didn't mention when I'd met with her. Oh, I see. Clang. Gah. Ow, ow, ow. The giant washpan had suddenly appeared out of the sky and fell directly onto my head. It looked like Sally's just happened to be checking in on me right then. Please just forget about that last part. The commander had gone white. He could only frantically nod back. I could already feel a lump forming on my poor, aching head. I know I can fix it with a bit of healing potion, but you really whacked me good, stupid Sally's. That thing wasn't made out of aluminum, I'll have you know. It was wood, and wood is friggin' heavy. What are you doing stealing old jokes from back on Earth, dang it? I don't know if the god in charge of Earth told you about that, or if you've been sneaking peeks at Earth for yourself, but you can make your boobs whatever size you want. I'm the one who should be feeling sad here, you ass. Huff, huff. Well, at least the commander seemed like he completely believed me after that, so I guess everything worked out. Alright, I guess I'll have you all come with me to headquarters, then. No thanks. The commander could only stare blankly back at me after I so casually brushed off his order. I just saw 6 other soldiers who were part of a kidnapping ring targeting cute girls. I don't know how many others are also working with them, so I'm not just gonna follow you somewhere without question. I wasn't born yesterday, you know. The commander fell silent, unable to refute my point. Still, he wasn't just going to let me go that easily. And no, I can't allow that. We have a responsibility to fulfill our duties as well, you see. The commander couldn't pull any funny business with the people who were saved through a divine intervention from the goddess Celestine herself. That was why he still wore that troubled look on his face even though he wasn't backing down. It'd be an even bigger pain if they took us to a military building or to see the governor or something. Now this is a dilemma. What to do? Oh, I know. I still have that strategy that's worked for me before. Well, I don't know what people will do to me if I get taken away somewhere private where people won't be able to see me, so I'm going to have to refuse. I don't want to spend too much time here since I need to hurry and get to the next town. In that case, I'd like you to tell your superiors that I'll answer any questions they have in the waiting area over there. We're leaving just before noon, so if you need us for anything, you should request that of us before then. I'd also like to ask you contact the families of the girls who were kidnapped. My family is already here, as you can see, I said, pointing to Roland and the others. No, well. But, if none of that's necessary, then we'll just be on our way. Wait. Please wait. The commander was obviously flustered after seeing I had no intention of giving up. I happen to value my life, so I won't back down on any of this. If we just stay here wasting time, that's just less time for you before I leave. After mentally wrestling over what to do about the situation, the commander eventually ran off, but not after leaving a group of soldiers behind to keep an eye on us. I wasn't planning on tricking him and trying to sneak away or anything. I mean it. Oh, maybe he left those soldiers to watch over the kidnappers since he was in such a rush and didn't have time to deal with them. But they were all looking at us for some reason. You should be watching the guys on the ground over there. They're the real criminals here.